I'm David Flint, and this is Australia Calling. And our subject today is, after Afghanistan, is nation building a dirty word? And who better to comment on that than the Washington-based geostrategist and bestseller, Greg Copley. Greg, what are your views on that proposition that nation building is out the window?
Well, nation building is never out the window, but of course, nations must be built by their own societies. That's the prerequisite. One can never give freedom to another country. One can never give a national identity to another country. A society must take for itself its sovereignty and take for itself its identity and therefore guide its own growth. And if it doesn't prosper, it's because it hasn't done the work it must do by itself. Does that mean that a nation cannot or should not rely on or develop alliances with other countries who can help? Of course they should take advantage of every leverage point that they can get around the world. Should Afghanistan build relationships with other states in order to acquire technology, acquire different thoughts about infrastructure development and governmental policies and the like? Of course they should. But no country survives if it uses an imported model of governance. Governance has to grow from the grassroots, from the very souls of the people who inhabit the territory. This in large part is why we see failures in post-colonial Africa, where the various states have adopted either the governmental models of France or Belgium or Britain, or in the case of Nigeria, the United States. And these forms of governance do not resonate at a grassroots level. If you go to a country like Nigeria, you see that people turn, when they have an immediate problem, to their traditional chiefs and monarchs and tribal governance, because that's where they expect to get understanding and wisdom. They don't turn to the federal politicians in Abuja, who they see as being entirely alien to the local needs. The politicians go to Abuja to manage oil revenues which the people never seem to see. And they either steal from it or they mismanage it, and it doesn't actually have any resonance with the people in the country. In Afghanistan, we saw that Afghanistan was given...
Can I just interrupt you on Afghanistan, and before you come to it, tell you a story, and this may allow you to embellish a story. I run into quite a few Afghans in Sydney, and when I'm getting to talk to them, I invariably bring them round to lamenting the present situation in Afghanistan, which is invariably awful, and saying, well, was there a good period in Afghanistan? They all invariably refer to the reign of Zufir Shah, I think the last king, particularly that period where he constitutionalized the monarchy. And some have even referred to that as a golden period. This was a period when he balanced different interests, but he also seemed to raise the status of women. He created freedom. He created a parliamentary system, and there seemed to be freedom of speech, and it worked very well. And I think this is something which the Americans did not quite understand when they came to power after the intervention following 9/11. What's your comment on that?
Afghanistan is a complex set of societies. It's not a single culture, not a single language, not a single religion. It's geographically divided, tribal, ethnic, religious units, and they all are fiercely protective of their identity. They were, however, very pleased to be able to recognize the light umbrella, the light touch of the Afghan monarchy, which was put above the overall country, largely because the monarchy in Afghanistan did not reach down into every society and attempt to regulate it or standardize it. It was quite easy to have a Tajik or a Pashtun or a Dari or a other linguistic or cultural identity or religious identity, and also to have an Afghan identity, because the Afghan crown sat so lightly above the structure. It united the country, but yet didn't oppress it. And yes, the king was able to gradually modernize the country. Perhaps he couldn't build as much infrastructure throughout the country as was able to be later done by fiat governments which were able to just say, well, we're going to build a road or a power grid across all of these different societies and make it work. Of course, the Crown had difficulty in doing that because it had to rely on consensus and peacemaking. Now, after 9/11, when the Americans started to attack Afghanistan, ostensibly only to eradicate the safe havens for al-Qaeda terrorists, there were a couple of lawyer jirgas, these grand assemblies of elders from all over Afghanistan. And these lawyer jirgas basically called for the restoration of Xiao in Italy. And the king was prepared to do it. He was elderly at the time. He subsequently died. But had he been brought back in, and had there been some respect shown for this successful cultural institution of the Afghan monarchy, we would not have seen the great competition for total control that we saw emerge under the Taliban, and under others. Of course, we saw the Taliban going into Afghanistan before the Americans went in there, and that was because of an earlier failing, if you like, when the support for the monarchy, King Zahir Shah, was cut back largely because of US influence on the Iranians who were helping to support Zahir Shah at the time. And once that happened, we saw the overthrow of Zahir Shah by his, I think, nephew, Dawood, who became
his nephew,
yes, president. And he was a prince, but he ran if you like, a Republican government. And then he was
a communist, wasn't he?
Dawood was not a communist. No, quite the contrary. Dawood was overthrown by the communists.
I thought he was associated with the Russians.
No. Well, so were a lot of people. So was the Shah of Iran, because when they're on your border, you have to deal with them. And Dawood did deal with them, but he kept them at bay. But then you had the two factions of the Communist Party in Afghanistan, the Pacham and the Khalq. They were competing, jockeying for power. One of them overthrew Dawood and installed a communist government, but unfortunately that wasn't the branch that Moscow favored. So then that branch was overthrown, and the new branch came to office as the communist government of Afghanistan, which then in turn invited the Soviets into Afghanistan, and then the problem began. And the problem of foreign intervention actually helped create the Taliban. Well, they say helped create it. It gave a vacuum of groups who wished to oppose the Soviets. And the CIA at that point, and this was one of the great failings of President Reagan, who was otherwise a great leader, but he supported the creation of the Taliban and asked the Pakistani intelligence service, Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI, to help galvanize this group of Pashtun Sunni tribespeople to create a movement, and specifically to create a jihad, the holy war against the Soviets, which they did. Unfortunately, having created this monster, it was not something which could be turned off. So we see all of these failings which we're now facing in Afghanistan, including the creation of the Taliban, coming back to the problems caused by Western interference.
Could I just ask you, it's really about nation building. The British had an extraordinary experience in developing countries, and not only not only their own, by encouraging the emergence of people like the Khedive, the King of Egypt, and what happened in Greece and Belgium and numerous other countries. They certainly had a long experience. The Americans did not, but they seem to, and you've explained it to me, MacArthur did allow the monarchy to continue in Japan, otherwise the country might have fallen apart. But what do you see will happen when the Communist Party of China collapses? What will emerge there, and what ideally should emerge there to bring the country together and provide this easy transition to a much more peaceful and democratic society, we would hope?
Well, who says that we will see a unified China under any circumstances at that point? I think we'll start to see a return to what Mao used to have to fight, which was warlordism, China facing the risk of a vociferous breakup, a spinning off of component parts of China. We keep thinking of China as being a great historical unified nation state throughout modern history, through the last 2,000 or 3,000 years. The reality is that it has changed in character and in shape and in its language and its belief systems consistently over this period.
Is there then an analogy with the old British India and the associated states over which he held a protectorate? And people tended to think of this vast landmass as one country. Well, of course, it didn't end up as one country. It ended up eventually as three. And should we be looking at the potential of China and falling in the same way?
Absolutely. And bear in mind that whilst the British India was a figment of the imagination anyway, because it literally had a patchwork of states under its control, whether under the East India Company or under the British government. And there were lots of independent or quasi-independent. So essentially, yes, we saw many states come together to create modern India in 1947, and not all of those states came willingly. If you look at Deccan Hyderabad, which was a state of India the size of Belgium, only much, much richer, refusing to join the union with India, and as a result was invaded in 1949 by the Indian Army. So it was forcibly incorporated into India. So too, by a variety of means, was Jammu and Kashmir in the north, and that is still a matter of some contention today. And even in 2019, the Indian government had to send 900,000 troops and police into Jammu and Kashmir, ostensibly to pacify it because of the rise of Muslim terrorist groups there. I think
just on that, if I may interrupt, there's one question which intrigues me. Do you think that if the British extended dominion status sometime between the First and the Second World Wars to British India and left the nominally independent states alone, but just established British India as a dominion, there would have been a greater chance of the emergence of a more peaceful and united Indian government?
I think there were many opportunities which Britain could have taken to see that transition. But you look at the attitudes in various groups. Some of the Indian separatists were absolutist and basically were fighting other Indian groups for control of post-British India. You had successive British governments, including that in the wartime by Prime Minister Churchill, who said, Prime Minister Churchill said, "I have not become the King's first minister to preside over the death of the British Empire and the loss of India." And of course, that's exactly what he did preside over. But had Britain tackled it earlier and more sensitively, it's possible that this could have occurred. And it could have occurred not necessarily as a united India, but as an India of differing blocks. And even today, the great phrase which strikes fear into the heart of most Indian politicians is the phrase vociferous tendencies. This tendency of components of India to split off centrifugally, spin off into an autonomous Assam or an autonomous Kashmir or whatever. So this great fear of India is justifiable and still exists, just as it does.
On that, could I bring you back to China? And you've warned that China may not hold as a single country. Will the component parts, are they more likely to emerge as democratic states?
Again, I think we have to be careful in seeking or expecting democracy to be the guiding principle of states in the new era of the world. Democracy has been a fashion which has come into vogue and out of vogue at various times through history. We've seen democracy in the Indian or the states which make up India. We saw that there 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. We saw it in the Hellenic states for a period of time. But it comes into fashion and out of way.
If there was one place where Chinese people tried to get into, and they would risk going through shark-infested waters, swimming through shark-infested waters, and that was the Crown Colony of Hong Kong, which was certainly not a democratic state, but it was a state very much under the rule of law. Is that, do you think, what the Chinese people would be looking for?
They certainly would be looking for rule of law, because rule of law implies a degree of safety. But the great success of modern democracies around the world, and particularly in the West, has been to combine rule of law with freedom to the maximum extent possible. So for most people, freedom implies democracy, but it's not necessarily synonymous with democracy. Americans often think that countries like Australia and the United Kingdom are not democracies because they have a monarch at the head of state. However, what we see is the real expression of democracy is the freedom for societies to build consensus between governed and governors. This is often, if you like, the mandate or the bargain which is struck between rulers and ruled, in that they must respect each other's absolute rights, and the more that is done, the more successful a society is. So it doesn't necessarily require what we think of today as democracy, which is ballot box democracy. It requires that constant, minute by minute, agreement between all elements of society. What we've seen modern democracy transform into is something which is materialistic and transactional. We see people giving their vote, often surrendering their freedom in exchange for cash rewards or material rewards, or for shorter working hours or this or that. The reality is that modern democracy has largely outgrown itself because it's given away to voters more than the state can bring in. So in other words,
is this ancient Rome again?
Absolutely. And it's like going to Yellowstone National Park in the United States. There's a sign that says, "Don't feed the bears." Why? Because the bears don't understand when you have run out of food. And where we are with modern democracy is that we have run out of food, and the mass of the population, the bears, don't understand. They say, no, you must keep giving us food or entitlements.
They believe in deficit spending, obviously.
And deficit spending can only go so far, and it only goes as far as there is credibility and prestige in the currency. So you can keep printing paper currency or bonds or debt, and people will keep respecting it as long as that society has real vigor, real productivity, and the prestige of being legitimate. Once
So,
you
if I may bring this to an end, because I don't want to take too much of your time, what you're really saying is the dominant power, normally the United States, the dominant power should not try to impose its ideas of democracy and freedom. It should give, when it does in fact conquer a country, because that happens, as we saw in Afghanistan, it should really give the country what the country really wants, rather than trying to impose one single model on them. Is that the conclusion we should reach?
It's one of the conclusions. I think rather than give them what they want, it should allow the people of those conquered countries to take what they need, or to interpret this new gift, if you like, this new opportunity, as a chance to build the society that they wish to see. And if it's not the society which we think they should have, that's too bad for us, because it's too expensive for countries like the United States or Australia or Britain to go out and create little Americas, little Australias, little Britons, when this just takes a lot of work on our part, a lot of expense on our part, and nobody thanks you for it, and rightly so, because you rob people of their dignity, their choice, and their identity when you try to tell them who they should be.
Well, I must thank you for your very rich knowledge and understanding of these things. This has been Australia Calling, and the subject has been, after Afghanistan, is nation building a dirty word? And I think rather than trying to reinterpret that, I shall leave that to you, the audience. Thank you very much, Gregory.
Thank you.